Hi, everybody. I'm delighted there's so many of you here today. Let's see. I love journaling. I've done it for a very, very long time. And what many of you might not know is that before I was a librarian, I ran support groups for childhood survivors of incest and sex abuse. And one of the main tools that we used was sort of a therapeutic way was journaling. So I began journaling way, way back, and I've done it ever since. And now, at the risk of you thinking that I'm completely out of my mind, I'm going to show you how many journals I currently have in use. This is the one that sits beside the bed. And I use it all the time because my brain doesn't shut down very easily. So sometimes I need to pick up a pen and do some writing to get myself to settle down at night. And I wanted to show you on the question of therapeutic use of journals, because right now everybody is under considerable stress and distress, and maybe we're all struggling a little bit. I want to show you something. You'll see another version of this a little later in the presentation. This is a way to take journaling, especially if you're working with kids or you're not comfortable yourself, sorry, dyslexia, and divide down the page so it's not so intimidating. So I've divided it into 2 bigger squares and 2 smaller squares, and right up here it's 3 things that I did today, 3 things that I am grateful for, a happy memory, and something that I saw, which you are intended to draw in there, not write. And that is a way to kind of maybe help soothe your brain a little bit right now, because I know that we're all dealing with a significant amount of stress. This is a journal that I keep in the kitchen. It was a gift from friends years ago. And in this, I write down my secret recipes that I have made over the years, and just the ones that the kids and Shane really, really like find their way into this journal. This is a journal that I have going right now because working on the reserve, I'm trying to learn how to speak the Nakota language. And so I keep careful notes in here, and anytime an elder corrects the way I say something or tells me a new word I haven't heard before, I write it down and keep track of it in here. I suspect I'm going to be a long time with this because I'm old to be learning a new language, but it's interesting and lovely and fun and good for the brain. So that is my language journal. This is a dream journal. For a really long time, I would wake up first thing in the morning, before I hardly even opened my eyes, I would grab a pen and I would write down a dream, whatever I had been dreaming about in the journal. Now, this is a fun thing to do. It's a little bit weird too, because dreams leave you. They're so ephemeral. They're gone within minutes of waking up. So if you sit and write one down in a journal like this, when you go back months or years later, you read it and you go, it's like a perfect stranger wrote that down. You don't have any memory of it. So pretty fun. And how pretty is this journal too, by the way? I write poetry sometimes for myself, mainly for entertaining. And this is the books that I'm using currently to write down poems. I am working on a novel for young adults, and I actually have a couple of different books on the go, and I have a different color journal for each book, but this happens to be the one for the book called Mirror, Mirror that I'm working on right now, and it's actually full right to the end of notes and drawings and sketches and timelines and things like that. And I also draw every day, so this is my drawing journal. And I think I marked a drawing I was really proud of to show you guys. Look at my little monkey. Whoops. I draw every day for a drawing prompt. And that day, the drawing was monkey. So I drew a photograph from a photograph on the line. So you can see that I am indeed somewhat serious about journaling. So I'm going to do a little thing with here. And, oh, there we go. Do that. Kaylee will tell me if it worked well or not. Now, I am going to start on my slideshow now. So we've introduced myself already. Well, I'll answer any questions later, even about the therapeutic use of the journals, if you're interested in that, or any other thing that comes up throughout the presentation.
Okay, you're good to go, Rose. We can see your presentation.
Good. Oh, there we go. So Journals, using journals as tools to organize your work life. Here, these are, I've always used journals. Here's a picture of one of my journal shelves up in my office. You can see there's, this is a lifelong habit with me. So I happen to have attention deficit disorder. And there are qualities about attention deficit disorder that are wonderful. You have imaginative thinking, you're energetic, and there's a thing called hyperfocus, which can turn you into a real animal about anything that you love to do. Happily for me, and I suppose for my boss as well, one of the things I'm passionate about is library service. So it's not unusual for me to work for hours and hours on end, hyper-focused, because I really, really love what I'm doing. Unfortunately, people with attention deficit disorder have other challenges. They can be disorganized, bad short-term memory, really easily distracted, and so sometimes that can lead to a certain amount of stress at work. As it happens, I was at a library leaders meeting. Dr. Justin Weinhardt of the University of Calgary was doing a whole presentation on stress and dealing with stress at work. And it was an excellent presentation, very, very impactful. But for me, the single most important thing that happened at the very end of his presentation. And I think he almost threw it in as an afterthought. He mentioned that he also had attention deficit disorder, which caught my attention. And then he said that he'd started a new work schedule, a new work procedure, in which he sat down and actually made time every day deliberately, a few minutes at the beginning of the day and a few minutes at the end of the day to write in a journal. First, at the beginning of the day, to make a list of what he was hoping to get accomplished, and then at the end of the day, another list, checking off what he had got done, moving items forward, talking about things he'd accomplished or new things that might have come up throughout the day. And he said that it helped him to be organized, and it helped him to feel less stress. And I have to say, this is absolutely true for me as well. I had reached a point the first year or so that I had this job at Marigold, although I felt confident and I felt like I was doing a good job and really, really enjoying doing the job, I felt a great deal of stress. And because I work from home, there wasn't always this tidy, this is the end of the day, and now we quit thinking about work, because my office was just up the stairs. And so much of my work day takes place in my own home. So that meant that I couldn't always shut down very well. This technique of stopping at the end of the day, taking the last 10 to 15 minutes, going through the list, writing down things, getting sorted out for the next day, meant that I quit waking up in the middle of the night fretting that I'd forgotten something or stressed about something I had to do the next day. Very, very helpful. I owe, actually, Dr. Justin Weinhardt a great debt of gratitude, because he made me much better at my job. So, when I buy a new journal, and actually, I didn't buy my journal this last time. It was bought for me by Allison at Marigold. And it's just a plain journal, but a very nice one, blank, the striped pages. I like to put a little something fancy on it to mark it as my own. And one of the first things I do is put my name and contact information in the front, lest I should lose it, because that would be a nightmare for me. And then I go through the first 2 pages. Actually, I think this might be partly here. There we go. You can see a page. I actually stopped to think about whether I really wanted to show you guys how sloppy my writing was. But then I thought, you won't judge me. I'm sure librarians are lovely people. Also, in fact, these journals are just for us. They're just for you to use to help you with your own organization. So if you look at it that way, it doesn't matter what the handwriting is like or how untidy it might be. What matters is that it suits your brain, your workflow, and how you like to get things done. And this works for me. If you look, I have to keep track of a number of things in the practice of my job. And if you look up at the top of the page, there's a K with 62. That means that day I must have driven to Morley and back, and I drove 62 kilometers. And I'll need that information later for an expense report. It says 9 to 4, that's how many hours I worked that day. And P and 10, that means that I met with 10 people throughout the day and talked with them about my work. So you can see here on September 14th, that's written down there. That is my days list at the beginning up at the top. And over on the other side is where I took notes from meetings that I was at. And one of the first things I did was write down the name of everybody at the meeting up at the top of the page. I'm entirely capable of forgetting my own sister's name in the midst of introducing her to someone. So people's names are very, makes me anxious. So when I go to a meeting, I write down everyone's names at the top. And in fact, even if it's a telephone meeting, I write down the name of the person who I'm talking to on the telephone, because that way I'll be able to feel relaxed. I won't be stressed about forgetting their name because all I have to do is glance at my notes and it's right there. And so then I'm making notes. I can't really, oh, it looks like I was talking about the Banff Library and, oh, a land acknowledgement. They wanted to put one in. So I was talking with a group of elders that day about that. And you can see there's also a couple of language notes, which I transferred later into my language journal. And this is an important point, because this is what works for me. But if this was your own journal, you would lay it out in a way that made sense to you, or that was perhaps structured towards your day as well. You know, for me, I like one that I put the date up at the top myself, because typically I only work 3 days a week, maybe 4. And sometimes it might be Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and other times it might be on Thursday and Monday. So a regular day timer doesn't work very well for me. This way, I write down the date of the day that I'm working on and work my way through it. Works out really well. I'm just going to check my notes here. I don't want to look away and seem rude, but I want to make sure that I'm telling you everything that I want to tell you. I like an analog journal like this. Writing with pen and paper is for me the best way my brain works. It makes part of my brain function that helps me with memory and organizational skills. But if you happen to be a person who likes tech and has something on their computer or their handheld device that works for them, that's fine too. You could use the same kind of techniques in a journal like that as well. So you want to turn a basic journal into sort of a tailored journal, something specifically for you and your own work style. This is from the front of my book, and one of the first things I do when I get a new book is dedicate the front to be a table of contents, because for a while I was putting bookmarks in there, but that was messy and I would lose them and it didn't work very well. This way, if there is a meeting that I'm at and something important takes place, I put it at the beginning in my little table of contents, and I can find it easily when I need to work on it later. You can also see that I've got a system there where I write down an F for finished, if I've finished taking care of something. Or no, actually the F stands for follow up, and a check mark means that I finished doing what I needed to do with that particular piece of information. And when I've started my new journal this time, the one that I've got today, it looks just the same, but it's organized differently in a couple of ways. The first of which is, instead of just one page for the table of contents, I've got 2 pages, because you can see I ran out of the room on that page before I got finished. Also, I put in a couple of special pages this time, one on articles that I want to write. That's a spot that's in here that I can go back to over and over again. Also, one of the things that happens when you're a librarian is people suggest books to you all the time. So I've set aside a page in my journal to go back to and write down the name and author of any book that someone suggests to me, because the Post-it notes were not doing it for me. I had Post-it notes stuck all over everything, and for someone whose brain is already a little bit chaotic, you really don't need that kind of untidiness. So having all of these things organized in the journal works really well for me. And I don't know what kind of thing you might like to put in your own journal. There might be something else that you need to keep track of. Something that has just occurred to me, you know, right now I'm not generating any expenses because I'm just here in my own house. But when I'm on the road, sometimes I have to buy lunch, or if I'm doing a special program, I might have to pick up some craft supplies or something. So along with the other things at the top of the page there, I think from moving forward, I'm also going to put a little expenses thing. If I spend any money, I'll note it at the top of the page. Part of the reason for doing all of this is because it helps keep me organized. Reporting back what I'm doing to my boss so she can report up to the Public Library Services branch is an important part of my job, and not my favorite part, I have to confess right now. But having this journal and being able to page through it and see what I've done from day to day and week to week, extremely helpful. It's had a huge impact on. I really believe that I'm much better at my job with this going on. Here's a picture I talked to you about, that non-work journal at the end of the day. And I took this idea from Linda Berry, who I think is absolutely marvelous. If you've got a little list in your journal of books you should read, write Linda Berry down and look up some of her stuff. She's so funny, so fabulous, and so smart. And this is an idea I took from that, where you divide the page into 4 pieces. And you can see there, I talked about it earlier as a specific thing we could do right now to help us get through the crisis we're all going through. But this one is her version of it, which she suggests to help people be less intimidated. You make a list of things you did that day, things you saw that day, something that you heard that day, and draw a picture of something that you saw that day. Breaks the journal down. I think this is a really useful thing if you are working with students or with your own children and you're trying to encourage some writing. This is a good way to make that journal a little less frightening. So I'm just going to check my notes and see if I've told you everything that I meant to tell you here today. It's important that the system you make kind of can evolve. So, you know, don't get married to one way of always doing it. If your job shifts or your responsibilities shifts, you learn a new skill or you have new ideas, you want to be able to evolve the way you use these journals. The whole idea is that it's going to support you in your job and in what you're going to want to do. And really, that's about it for me. Journaling has always been a super important part of my adult life, and I expect will continue to be. But being able to change the way I do things in terms of my professional life has been really significant. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Rose. Yes, everybody, please feel free to use that question chat box. And yeah, so we'll just give it a minute here and wait for some questions to come in.
There we go. I'm just showing you my beautiful sticker that I put on the journal that just arrived.
Okay, we have a question here. Do you still use a day timer or agenda?
Yes, I do.
And do you keep different notes in the day timer than in your journal?
The day timer is very specifically used as a calendar. You know, I just very quick notes so that I remember when I'm going somewhere. You do have to have something still, I find, that's got every day written down, and so I use it for that. And the day timer is still a very useful skill. It's just that when I was trying to write notes and keep receipts and remind myself of stuff all in the day timer, it simply wasn't equal to the job. So I carry around 2 of them. Oh, I did forget to tell you something that is kind of important. When you have attention deficit disorder, you can be a little scattered. And in order to keep my life moving forward, I have pretty strict rules that I use with myself. And the journal has the same kind of rules as my glasses and my keys, because I can't afford to lose track of any of those things. So the journal is always right on my work surface, right beside my computer, or I have a special bag that I bring with me when I'm going to work to haul books or paperwork or even my computer sometimes. So the journal is always on my work surface or it's in that bag. It never goes anywhere else because I would be quite lost without it.
Great. Okay, so let's see here. Somebody has asked, was it hard when you first started, or did you find it really easy to pick up the habit?
The beginning of the day, that part was very easy. I would go upstairs, turn on my computer, open up my email. I would start my list for the day, then look at my email and add anything extra that might have arisen from the email into my list of to-do things for the day. And then I would just carry on, working my way down that list as best I could, getting everything accomplished. The end of the day practice, and in fact, if you were to look, you would see quite sloppy sometimes in here at the end of the day, because it's, for some reason, I find that a harder discipline. Oh, I remember something else I meant to tell you guys and forgot. I'll see if I can find a page in here where it's happened. If I'm going about my day and I have more than one meeting, here's one. This was a busy day. You can see I've got quite a list of things up at the top here that I needed to get done. Down at the bottom, I've addressed whether I accomplished them or not, or whether I had to move on. But over on this side where I'm taking notes, because I had 2 different meetings that day on Zoom, and for the first meeting, I took all of my notes in black, and for the second meeting, I took all of my notes with pink ink, partly because if you have a pink pen, you kind of want to use it, but also because it meant that when it's time for me to write my report for Laura, I'm going to be able to very easily differentiate between the notes from the first meeting and the second meeting just by the way they're colored. That's a fairly new innovation to the journals for me, just in the last few weeks.
Okay, somebody is wondering, where do you buy unique journals?
I love journals, and this one is bought for me through work, and it's a fairly ordinary journal, but I've got lots and lots of absolutely gorgeous ones, and I do find that beautiful journals can be very, very costly. There's a couple of bookstores in town that sell them, and they're really high priced, and I might get one for myself for a treat. I wouldn't use it for a work one because, you know, I go through a lot of those. You know, I go through 2 or 3 a year of those now. But for something where you were going to perhaps keep track of your thoughts or your dreams or poetry or something, you want to buy something special, there's a lot of beautiful ones out there. If you happen to be near a city and you go to Chapters, they're going to be full of gorgeous journals, as is any bookstore. And if you live like I do in the Bow Valley, I go to Bow Valley Office Supplies. I'm just looking to see. I don't have one right here that's particularly from Bow Valley Office Supplies. Well, this one is, but this is just a very plain Jane kind of a journal. But they have some really, really gorgeous journals there, beautiful things. And of course, you know, there's different journals for different reasons. The ones for drawing don't have any lines in them, of course. There, look at my little dog I drew for German. Okay. So that's where I would go, Bow Valley Office Supplies, any office supply store really. And, you know, lately I'm thinking really hard about the practice of going to someplace like Amazon or Chapters to buy something, when maybe it would be better if I just popped into town and bought something at Bow Valley Office Supplies where I know the people that I'm going to be dealing with.
Someone would like to know, Rose, do you ever go back and reread your old journals?
Well, the work ones, absolutely I do. Certainly just at the beginning of the lockdown, my boss needed a report from the whole last 2/3 of the year, so I went through and used my journal that way to write a good, sensible report, nice and inclusive, not skipping anything, so the journal was handy for that. And I do go back sometimes, certainly journals for creative writing or poetry or art, going to go back and reference those probably more than once. I have a lot of journals that I wrote in when I was going through some difficult things, and over the years when I was doing the survivor groups for incest survivors, because that was some often very difficult stuff. And I might go back and reread one of those someday. Right now they're just gathering dust because that part of my life is largely behind me. But it works all right. When I was a really young girl, like when I was 15 or so, 14, 15, I got my first journal, and I was not a very good journal keeper. I didn't write in it very often. It was one of those little ones where you had, it was a 5-year diary, so you only got like a little slip of a page to write in. It had a little lock. I can remember what it looked like. And I did write in it sporadically over the years. Boy, I wish I knew what happened to that. I would love to be able to go back and look inside that girl's head and see what she was thinking. Or maybe not.
And how many journals do you write in a day on average?
I write in the blue one that is by the bedside. Most nights I write in that because it helps tell my brain that it's time to stop fretting about things, stop thinking about work particularly, you know, because I am crazy about the job. I can stay up for hours going over and over something, thinking about what I'm going to do the next day. The journal tells me it's time to stop that now and go to sleep. So that one I write in most days. The work one, any day that I'm working, I'm going to be writing in that. The drawing one, every day. I've always got a drawing. You know, today I have to draw a picture of a pig. I can't remember why. That was just the prompt of the day. So after I'm done here, maybe I'll go and draw a pig. And other ones, it's more sporadic. The cookbook one, I only write in there when I come up with a new recipe that I'm really excited about. And the poetry, it's been a while. I go through fits and starts with that. Sometimes I'm writing in the poetry journal every single day, and other times not so much.
And have you ever made your own journal or diary from scratch?
Ooh, I never have, but I've got a cousin who makes diaries, and she showed a video of how it was done. It looks absolutely like a fabulous, fabulous thing to try. It does call for fairly exacting skills, and my skill sets tend to be more of the flying off in all directions at once variety. So I don't know, but it might be good exercise for me in precision and paying attention to detail and being tidy. So perhaps I will try to do that sometime. It would be very fun, I think. I did make little journals some time ago now. I was a brownie leader for a really long time. And it was a regular part of our brownie experience to make a little journal at the beginning of them. What did we call them? Maybe they were called task books, or no, challenge books. They were called challenge books. And the kids would all make their own little journals, and we would put challenges at the top of every page, and the kids would run about doing them. I actually do this for library programs too sometimes if I'm working with a bunch of kids, because when you set out a number of tasks, there are some kids who will finish a craft in 2.5 minutes and then be bored. And then you've got other kids who want to work on the craft for an hour. So a way to use a little journal to help with that is to have a challenge journal. And in library programs, they would say things like, go around the library and write down the names of 5 red books, or look for a book that has a boy's name in the title, or go find a picture, a piece of art, and draw a picture of it in your journal. So we would generally have about 10 challenges in one of these little challenge books, and it would help restless kids have something to do. And if you do have that annoying child who comes to every program and goes, that's boring, I don't want to do it, you can say, good, go take your challenge book and do something like that. So that's a fun use of journals for working with kids. Thank you for asking that question.
Okay, next is, I noticed references to ADD and indexing. This is reminiscent of Ryder Carroll bullet journaling. Have you ever incorporated any of his methods into your journals?
Ooh, I don't know who that is. I'm going to write it down right now. Ryder Carroll?
Yes, R-Y-D-E-R Carroll, C-A-R-R-O-L-L.
Nice, thank you. I'm going to have a look at that later. Clearly not using any specific thoughts from that person, because I had not heard of them, but I'm always eager to learn. I do follow a young woman on YouTube who has attention deficit disorder, and I can't recall her name right now, but her channel is called How to ADHD, and I learned a lot about using journals for organization from her.
Sorry, Rose, I just had to write down the name of that YouTube channel. Somebody is wondering how this would translate to something like OneNote. Have you ever tried an electronic version?
I've never tried an electronic version, but I suspect it would work very well. I watched someone one day working on, we were at a meeting together, and she was using an iPad, and she had a fabulous system where she could change the color of the font, and she could move things around, and she could sort things into list right on the screen. And I admit to a certain amount of jealousy. I thought it looked like it was pretty awesome. For my own personal preference, paper is better just because I know a few things about the way my own brain works. But if you have the kind of brain and the kind of skills and the kind of budget to have the technology, I say go for that too.
Do you have a favorite pen you always use to write in your journals?
Well, the pink one is just recently come into thing, but my husband gave me a beautiful pen for my birthday a few years ago, and I don't have it right here handy. It's the one I use when I'm writing before I go to sleep at night. But it's gorgeous. It's got this really heavy, dark, easy roll to the nib on it, and it's really soft and heavy, and I just really enjoy that. It's a great pen. Ooh, when I was a kid, though, I had one of those pens that had 4 different colors, and you could click down the different colors. Yeah, I'd like to have one of those pens again, if I could find one. Probably still out there.
Well, I think most of us in the library world, we pretty much, we love pens.
Yeah, we do. I love Bow Valley Office Supplies. I just wander around in there wanting to buy one of everything, even though honestly, I can't justify it, but I do love it in there.
We've had some suggestions from people about places to buy journals. Somebody says Etsy. Somebody else suggested Winners. And then added the caveat if we ever get to go shopping again. So yes, there is that.
Etsy's are good for people who can't leave their house.
Oh, Etsy is wonderful, yes. Okay, here's a question. How would you suggest someone keep this practice going? They started a couple of times, but then they miss a day or a week and then stop. So do you have any tips for how to make it into a habit for yourself?
Now think about that for a second, but I'm going to start by saying, don't be mean to yourself. So you skip a few days, it doesn't matter. It's not like you have to start all over again. You just start from where you left off. The Linda Berry idea of dividing the journal into pieces so that you're not required to write an entire page down. You can just jot a few notes and still feel like you've accomplished. That's really, really helpful. And I do feel like I keep these things are all over the house. There's one beside the bed. There's one downstairs where I sit to watch TV because it's rare for me to be able to just be interested in TV. I like to have something else going on at the same time. There's journals by my desk upstairs, and there's journals by the chair I sit in to read in case I read when I'm reading a book. I like to be able to write down if I come across a word I don't know. I don't really want to interrupt the flow of reading enough to go and look up a word, but I will write it down in my little journal right beside my chair there, and then later on I'll look it up so I can. By the way, nothing makes me happier when I'm reading a book than if I come across the beautiful use of a word I've never heard before.
Here's a question. Do you ever want to look back at something in a journal but can't remember which one, or do you have a good system of keeping the journals in some kind of order?
up until I started this system of creating a little table of contents at the beginning of my work journals, it never occurred to me to be organized about it. I did have a habit, anytime I opened a new journal on the front page, I would name the journal. I'm telling you guys too much, you're going to think I'm nuts. But I would indeed, I would always, any new journal always got a name, and then I would be writing to the journal when I was writing things down. Oh, here's something fun that we did with journals for a long time. I've got a girlfriend named Christine who I work out with 5 mornings a week down in the gym, or did back in the day. We're not doing it now. But we got into the habit of having a journal that we shared. And I would take home the journal and write on a page, and then I would give it to her, and she would take it home, read what I'd written, and then she'd write on the next page. And sometimes we carried on sort of weird conversations in the journals. Sometimes we created a story together, and sometimes we just wrote whatever popped into our heads without any regard for what the person had written last. But it was kind of a fun thing, and actually it might be a way to encourage yourself to keep on writing, is if you had a buddy that you wanted to share a journal with. If it's same reason that I keep going back to the gym, even though honestly I'm kind of a round girl, is that I know Christine's always going to be there, so I have to always show up because she's my buddy and we work out together. And maybe journaling with someone would be the same kind of a thing, you know. Send letters back and forth by sharing a journal back and forth.
That's a really cool idea. Oh, here's a suggestion. Somebody says that they use their label maker when each one is finished and put the dates on it.
Smart.
I do love using a label maker.
Oh, that's so cute. Yeah, a good idea to put labels on the journals. I wonder if it's too late to go back and kind of organize mine. I have to say, I have always kept the habit of dating the top of a page when I go to work in a journal, whether it's whether I'm not always my art journals, but the rest of them are dated. So that would make it somewhat easy to line them up, put them in order. You know how librarians are.
Someone would like to know if when you journal, do you journal in silence or do you listen to like podcasts or music?
For the work journal, I am not listening to music at that point in time. Other things, if I'm writing, I don't listen to music that has words in it because I'll find myself writing down the words I hear. It goes straight in my ear and out my fingers, apparently. But I do love music that's just instrumental to listen to when I'm doing any kind of art or writing, for that matter. I like to have music playing. It's one of the things. Attention deficit means it's really, really hard for me to only do one thing at a time. So music will use up a portion of my brain, and then that will use up that part of my brain, and it will shut up long enough for me to get some good work done. So that is the way that I use music to sort myself out a little bit. I also find lots of ideas come to me while I'm driving for the same reason, because my brain is busy with other traffic and the road conditions and operating the vehicle, and so much of my brain get used up that I can hear the thoughts in my head much more clearly than I normally can. My husband actually bought me a little tiny recorder so that I could record ideas when I was driving down the road if something occurred to me.
And this is just a comment. Somebody says, great presentation. I like the example of work and personal. So often we try to keep it separate, but I always fail. Having a personal journal helps give a place for those thoughts too.
Absolutely. And especially if you're in a circumstance like I am all the time, and many of us are right now, where you are working inside your home. So that division, that line, it can get fuzzy. It can get really, really fuzzy. I didn't realize quite how much until I was like sending team messages at like 6:30 in the morning, and I went, okay, you need to get a life, really. But that's just the way things are right now.
And the last one that we have here is just another comment that I love the idea of dividing the page into 4.
Yeah, it really does take a lot of the scariness out of it. You know, I've been doing this for so long, it never crosses my mind that people might find a blank paper a little bit intimidating. You know, I just start writing immediately. It's a very comfortable place for me, but it's not comfortable for everyone. And I would actually like to make this presentation sometime, I think, to students, because I think that students might find that this was a great way to organize themselves and to keep their thoughts orderly, especially, you know, if sometimes they're taking 3 or 4 different subjects in a day. Using a journal in this way could be very, very helpful, I expect.
Oh, one more question here. Someone is wondering if you've ever heard of voice journals.
Voice journals? No, it's like when you would speak and the journal would record you?
Yeah, that's all it says. I'm wondering if that's what they mean, is just, yeah, recording a voice journal. Oh, yep, they say yes, that's exactly what they meant.
That would be lovely. My grandmother kept a journal every day of her life, and it was usually very short. And when I was a little kid, I stuck my nose in a couple times, and it mainly said things like, you know, planted all the peas today, or it rained a lot, or, you know, one of the cattle needed something. And so they weren't very interesting to a child. But she's been gone a long time now. But all those journals are gone too. I have no idea what happened to them. But boy, wouldn't I love to be able to do that. It wouldn't be a voice recording, but I would be able to hear her voice in my head when I read them, I bet. That would be awesome.
Wonderful. Okay, well, thank you for joining us today, everybody. And I hope you are all managing to stay safe and sane, and yeah, enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye now.